Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the November 2024 Lancaster County Planning Commission meeting. Thank all of you that came out on this lovely night to join us. Thank the commission members that are here. Our first order of business is our minutes from the October meeting. Did everyone receive their packet, time to review?
Yes.
Any changes or updates needed from those
No.
minutes? Glenn, you good with those?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to accept the October Planning Commission meeting minutes as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. We've got one consideration item on our docket this evening. It's in regards to the waterfront overlay revision that we've been working on. And Ms. Hall, I'll let you take it away, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, we have a consideration item to discuss a request received to review and revise the Lancaster County, Virginia Land Development Code, Part 1 zoning ordinance, Article 18, waterfront overlay, all districts W1. The recommendation is to review the existing ordinance and discuss possible amendments to address residents' concerns regarding the impacts to the waterfront overlay on their ability to subdivide parcels and send proposed language to public hearing at the next Planning Commission meeting if consideration is completed. County staff and the Board of Supervisors have received feedback that the zoning code Article 18 waterfront overlay district should be updated to address residents' inability to subdivide parcels that are within 800 feet of a tributary stream due to restrictions placed on parcels within the waterfront overlay, which requires a minimum lot size of 2 acres. At the last Planning Commission meeting, staff presented a revision with illustrative mapping showing possible proposed revisions. After review, Planning Commission members requested additional possible revision scenarios. Included in your packet were the following 7 different possible options for revision. Provided for you today is an 8th option and corrections to option 3 and option 4. Those corrections are shown in purple. That's just a slight language change to accommodate the water interface shoreline language, and we can get into that in the presentation. The proposed code language is intended to effectively address the community's concerns regarding the waterfront overlay district while also maintaining the original intent of the code. Staff member Glenn Rowe has provided GIS mapping illustrating current waterfront overlay and the proposed waterfront overlays based on these potential language changes. These maps were included in your packet. This discussion is envisioned as an additional work session to review potential revisions to the existing county ordinance to address residents' concerns. The time of the drafting of this memo, we didn't have any additional feedback since the last meeting, but since this memo was created, county staff have received 2 emails, and those have been shared with you, and there was also an op-ed in the paper by Mr. Costello. All right, I'd like to go through a presentation. Glenn, if you could share the screen. All right. This is the current 800-foot waterfront overlay district as it exists today. This shows a comparison of the language that we're discussing tonight, which is the baseline tidal shoreline and the water interface shoreline. These are 2 definitions that would have to be added to the definition zoning code. Well, one, depending on which option you choose. If you choose baseline tidal shoreline, it would be that darker orange color that you see that covers a greater area on that right picture. The lesser coverage there would be the water interface shoreline. You can see the difference. There's a greater difference in areas with more tidal marsh because the baseline tidal shoreline includes tidal marshes, whereas the water interface shoreline includes open water and the shoreline affiliated with that navigable water. So option 1 is the baseline tidal shoreline, 800 feet with no tributary streams included. You can see at the top of your corner, the Crawford's Corner area, and this was an illustrative example, a section of the county that's really further inland where you can see a major difference. So we're going to look at all the options on this particular section. So this is option 1. This is option 2, which is the baseline tidal shoreline, 800 feet and 400 feet off of tributary streams. That green, the light green that you see is that 400-foot buffer, and the darker orange is that baseline tidal shoreline. Option 3, this is the water interface shoreline. You can see here, not much of a difference from the baseline tidal shoreline. As you go inland, there aren't as many tidal marshes, and in this case, there aren't any tidal marshes. So option 4 would be the waterfront interface shoreline and the 400 feet that we just discussed. And you can see that's really no change there. And you can see the comparison between baseline tidal and the water interface on inland versus coastal. So this is what we were just talking about, where on the left, you see there's not really a change between the baseline tidal and the water interface. But on the right, as you are coastal, where tidal marshes are included in baseline tidal, it covers a much larger area. In fact, the baseline tidal in some cases would cover more of an area than we would currently cover with our 800 feet, simply because we do not currently look at tidal marshes when we interpret it. We just use the USGS blue line. So option 5, Tara had specifically asked to see just reductions in the existing overlay to 600 feet. You can see how far that goes up towards Crawford's Corner there. This is from 800 to 600. Option 6 is the 800 to 400, so we're still way up there. Option 7 is that 200 foot, still impacting a lot of parcels further inland in the county. And then here's a comparison in the reduction of existing overlay. The darkest green is as it currently exists, the 800, and then it goes down from there. All right, option 8 was added, and that was provided for you today. This is the water interface shoreline, 800 feet, is still 2 acres. So that's as it exists with the 2 acre minimum, using the water interface shoreline, and 400 feet off tributary streams. So as it exists now, we're 800 feet off tributary streams, so this would be 400 feet off tributary streams, and this is an option for 1 acre in that 400-foot buffer, or a half acre in that 400-foot buffer if you were to have either public water or sewer. The reason that's an option is in our code, if you have public water or sewer, you can have a smaller lot size when subdividing. So that seemed appropriate to add as an option here. So tax map number 27211 is Ms. Therese Smith's property, and she came and spoke to you at the last meeting and shared her story with us. And since the last meeting, the property that surrounds her property was surveyed, and that changed the shape of her property a little bit. So if you remember, her property was more of a rectangle on our GIS the last time we looked at it. And as it exists today, it's a little bit more of a square shape. So I can't say without her own survey, I can't make any guarantees that it would be possible, but as it's currently drawn based off of the survey that surrounds the parcel around her property, she would be able to divide with option 3 and option 4, and that's with the water interface, either just the water interface with 800, which is option 3, or the water interface with 400, which was option 4. If we use the baseline tidal shoreline, which includes those tidal marshes, to interpret it, she would not be able to subdivide at all. So you can see how that is a much more severe option, and that's shown in the orange color on the right-hand picture. So next steps. We would need to pick between the water interface or the baseline tidal shoreline to determine where you want to begin to measure that buffer. And then we would need to pick which option is preferred. At that point, if you pick an option, we need a motion to send the preferred option to public hearing at the January meeting, and then we would need a motion to send any necessary changes to Article 1, definitions of the zoning code, to include the language chosen in the preferred option. I do have the GIS available if there's a specific area you would like to look at. And I know at our last meeting, David Chubb had specifically asked for some information on lots for sale. Just pulling a few lots to look at. I had Heritage Point come up at $12,500 for 2.19 acres. HOA membership dues are $415 per year plus a potential special assessment, which is not entirely affordable for all people. I had a gentleman come in to talk to me about a lot in Laurel Point that he felt was a little bit affordable for him. It was $42,500, which is still unaffordable for many. However, when he looked into the Laurel Point covenants, you have a minimum home size of 2,500 square feet, not including basements, porches, patios, garages, and carports. So they also have a $350 annual fee. He was not able to pursue that option. He was trying to build a home for his son because the annual HOA fee and the minimum home size of 2,500 feet made that unaffordable. It was also a heavily wooded lot, so he would have had to pay that $42,500, pay to clear the lot, pay to have the soil work done, pay to have a well installed, and then pay to have the home built. So at that point, it was no longer an affordable option. We do have another member on staff that was looking to build a home for his daughter, and he was looking at the Coratone by the Bay subdivision where he currently lives. And essentially the lots were so small that he would have to buy multiple lots to make it work with the septic system. And so while those lots were affordable, I think under 10,000, by the time he bought multiple lots and then you have to pay the HOA dues on each lot, the cost started to go up from there. So in that case, it was unaffordable to buy a lot and build, and he ended up buying a home that had already been built, as it was a more affordable option for him, because obviously the septic and well had already been taken care of. So the costs on building are very high currently. And so that's the research that we did, and we can certainly do additional research on real estate prior to the next hearing. Hi, Tara, I saw you come in. I just want to go over one thing for you specifically. We were talking about Ms. Therese Smith's property, tax map number 27211. I've got it up on the screen for you. With option 3, using the water interface, that's the yellow color on the leftmost picture. She would be able to subdivide, she could get a 0.71 acre lot there, and a 2 acre minimum surrounding that lot. So she could have 2 lots there. Even if it was the water interface with 400 feet included, which is option 4, she could still subdivide. You can see on the right-hand picture the difference between the water interface versus the baseline tidal shoreline. That baseline tidal shoreline is that darker orange color. It is greater because it includes the tidal marshes, and in that case, she would not be able to subdivide at all. So that illustrates how restrictive that baseline tidal shoreline would be versus that water interface. And the water interface is basically the edge of open water as you would see it navigable. Baseline tidal would include areas with tidal marshes. So if you think about this section of the county that is north of here, next to the Chesapeake Trail, you have a little bit of water there that's canoeable or kayakable, and then off of that you have a large tidal marsh fringe. And so included in your packet was an illustrative drawing showing that that waterfront district as it exists touches almost all the way to the county property that we're in right now. So that was a pretty good example of how far that 800 feet goes.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? Or come in and catch up?
Unless there's something.
No. The big thing was just the difference in the baseline and the water interface. Baseline is what we're going off of now, correct?
No, what we're going off of now is the USGS blue line. So the
staff-
baseline tidal shoreline was a layer that VIMS has that includes tidal marshes. The water interface shoreline is another layer that VIMS has, and that does not include the tidal marshes. And that's the only difference between those two layers, is one includes tidal marsh and one does not.
Yeah, that was good. First off, I'd like to thank you and Glenn for the work that y'all have done on this. I know it's not an easy task, but the illustrations are very helpful, especially for me. And doing it down to the 100 or 200 feet minimums. You guys have any questions for Ms. Hall? So Tar, this is what staff is recommending we need to do as a commission before we go to a public hearing. Step one would be water interface or baseline option, and then so on and so forth, as you see.
And
What is-
Mr. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go. No, I was
I
going
was
to
just
say,
gonna-
what does staff recommend?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you if I could say. Staff's preference is option 3, which is the water interface, and I can show you on here. That's going to be the water interface, which is the yellow there, which keeps our 800 feet off of the shoreline, but does not include those tidal marshes, and it omits the tributary streams. I'll go back to that option and show you here. So this is the option that shows the water interface shoreline as it exists below Crawford's Corner. And then if we look at Mrs. Smith's property, where we just were, that would be just the yellow and not the green. That is staff's preference. It's still far greater than what's required for BAC compliance, which we just have the 100-foot resource protection area buffer. One of the emails that you received as a public comment made a very good point, in my opinion, that even if you have that 800-foot waterfront overlay buffer, it doesn't protect you from violations. So really, staff enforcement of violations, which we have been doing, is your protection there. So compliance with the Bay Act is how we protect our resources. And we work hard to achieve compliance with the Bay Act. We currently are working with the county attorney on multiple Bay Act violations. So it is something that we pursue all the way to enforcement in court if we have to. So in my opinion, in order to protect the environment and keep the intent of the waterfront overlay district, which was supposed to be, as I understand it, off of the shoreline, I think the water interface would be our best option. I'm not sure, based on the feedback that I've heard, that we ever really intended it for it to go all the way inland to a place like Crawford's Corner off of a perennial stream where you don't even have those tidal areas. So that would be staff preference.
And just to clarify on that, I mean, RPA setbacks, even though it's non-tidal waterfront, still applies.
Correct. Yes, that would not change. You'd still have that 100-foot buffer.
And you had mentioned that there was some acreage, option number 8.
Yes.
Depending on the public water and sewer. But that, I just was a little confused with that. It's dropping it down to 1 acre and half-acre option. I mean, as allowable by what the current zoning is. Is that a better way of interpreting that?
So that option 8 would keep the 800 feet off of the shoreline, and we would use the water interface for that. And then we would keep 400 feet off of tributary streams. Presently, it's 800 feet off of tributary streams, and it's all 2 acres. So that option 8 is giving you a reduction in that buffer by half, and it's giving you a reduction in the acreage by half without public water or sewer. And then you can reduce it another half to a half an acre if you have either public water or sewer. Now, as I just said that to you, that sounds very complicated, and it is. So a lot of the feedback that I receive from surveyors is that they do not understand whether or not a property is in the waterfront overlay district, and they want us to determine that for them. This would further complicate that because As it stands now, they know that in the waterfront overlay district, it's 2 acres. Well, now you have 2 additional options for 3 total, 2 acres, 1 acre, and a half acre. So that gets really complicated. And that's why that option is not the staff preference, because when you complicate zoning to that level, it takes an enormous amount of time to interpret and implement.
So you're suggesting no changes to the acreage minimums? Even though,
My preference
if
is.
if it's within the 800 feet?
Right,
of the
of the
water
water
interface.
interface, correct. That's my preference.
But then you would, the tributaries, and what you recommend is not in play.
That's correct.
But the
But it would
RPAs
still have the 100-foot RPA.
RPAs
Yes,
would still
but those
be-
tributaries are still protected by that 100-foot
Yeah,
RPA.
yeah.
Okay, I think I got it.
Option 3.
You see,
Okay.
you see what you saying about that? Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Could you explain, because I'm trying to find out, what is the difference between, I see water shoreline, baseline tidal shoreline, and I tried to find what in the world is the difference between, I know y'all got it, but what is
Yep.
the difference between option 1, 2, and 3?
Right, so 1, 2, and 3. So 1 and 2 are both baseline tidal. So that includes tidal marshes. So that's your only difference between 3 and 4. 3 and 4 are the exact same thing, but we're not including those tidal marshes because the waterfront, the water interface layer does not include tidal. So if we're thinking about that up the street from here, you have that area that would be kayakable, and then next to that, the water stops and it becomes tidal marsh fringe. So if we don't include that, that's option 3 and 4. If we do include all of those wetland grasses, as you'd have to start measuring the 800 feet from the outside of the wetland grasses. That takes it way further out to start your 800 feet, and that's the difference.
So are y'all in agreement that option 3 is preferable?
I prefer option 3.
That would be staff recommendation, yes.
Do you have any more on that one, Glenn?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So option 3 takes out the tributaries.
That's correct. Option 3 takes out the tributaries, and it does not measure from the tidal marshes. It measures from that
That's what I
water
thought.
interface.
I want to make sure that's what I understood.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. But if you think the tidal marshes should be included, then it would be the baseline tidal.
Right, and if you do baseline tidal, which
That's
is
what we got
way,
now.
no, that's way more restrictive than where we're at now.
It is?
Yeah, so if we do the baseline tidal, I'll show you on Ms. Smith's property. That's the orange on the right-hand side. So you could see how much further that is. The darker orange, that covers a greater area there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, as you know from past meetings, I'm opposed to all these changes.
I don't think your mic is on. There you go.
The act has protected this area for 36 years, and the more houses, septic systems, cars, people you put on a piece of property that's near the water or on the water, the more you reduce water quality in the whole area because water travels. The open scenery of our waterfront that we have with the 2-acre minimum is downgraded. And when you downgrade these marshes and wet areas, you're affecting our wildlife habitat. So that's one reason I oppose it. The second reason I oppose it is that this change will have absolutely no effect on housing affordability in the county. I think we have a realtor here tonight can testify, two of them, who can testify to that fact. Land near the water, whether waterfront, small streams, or picturesque marsh, tends to be our most expensive. So you mentioned a lot price in Laurel Point of $42,000. Laurel Point is an upscale development on the water. You could create all the lots in the world in Laurel Point, and they're not going to be available to people who are on a very tight budget. So this will make absolutely no change in the affordability of housing in the county. As far as the proposition by developers that county regulations are preventing affordable housing, I don't think the numbers bear that out. The county just approved 137 new lots, which are in addition to 78 existing lots in Hills Quarters that have been on the market for years. And the problem is demand. It's not availability of lots. King's Grant, a development proposed by the same David D'Onofrio, who apparently brought this whole proposition to the county and claimed that he needs relief from the act, or that the county needs relief from the act to make housing affordable. Now, this is the same guy who some years ago got a 770-acre development approved with 575 lots, every one of which remains unsold. So it's pretty hard to make a case that the county regulations are holding down building in the county because we're making lots unaffordable. That's baloney. And as far, I have a reaction also to a couple of comments made at our last meeting. One of the comments made by two people here tonight was that when the folks, Betty Barrick and folks like her got together 36 years ago and put together this ordinance, these two people don't recall any conversation about marshes, streams, anything like that. And the proposition was that the whole thing was designed only to protect the waterfront. Well, I think that's absolute baloney. I mean, Betty Barrick and the people that worked with her on this ordinance are, number one, very smart, but number two, very environmentally conscious. And they knew what a critical role marshes and small streams and that sort of thing play in the overall water quality of the county. So they put that in there deliberately. It's absolute hogwash that got in there by accident or by mistake. And then the second thing, comment from last meeting, the talk was about comparing the Chesapeake Bay Act and the 100-foot waterfront restriction of that act, and the waterfront overlay, at the same time the waterfront overlay is protecting 800 feet. Why does that need to protect so much more than the state protects in the 100-foot setback? Well, they're two entirely different types of ordinances. I mean, the state 100-foot restriction is on not only any building, not only any housing, cannot be closer than 100 feet to the water. But, I mean, you can have a swimming pool or all kinds of things you can't have. The 800-foot overlay restriction is a restriction on the number of houses you can put per acre. And Olivia, you pointed this out at the last meeting, I have to say. But anyway, I want to make clear the distinction between the two acts. They're nothing alike. You can't compare them. Anyway, I will oppose any and all changes in the act. It's served us well for 36 years. It's, I think, in large part responsible for the beautiful scenery we have on our waterfront, the openness we have, not to mention the water quality we have.
Thank you, Mr. Chubb. Tara, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I mean, I do believe that this change would increase the availability of affordable lots. And I don't think it will affect on the property that we're talking about that's on open water. Like, we've already said that's not going to change. So I don't know if I'm ready to make a motion, but I don't
Yeah.
agree with everything that
Thank you.
you said.
Steve?
I don't know, this option 3 that you're talking about, if it makes lots more affordable. I'm sort of like Dave on that, I don't know if that's going to do that. But I do think it gives an opportunity for, with the tributaries being out of it, for people who already own lots to be able to separate them and come up with what they need for the rest of their family. That reason, and making it easier for the county, because you're right, option 8 sounds like a good one, but you don't have the manpower to do it, so to me, I would go along with what the county's recommended on that.
Thank you. Glenn, you want to add anything else on this one?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else the county would like to add?
I think to Mr. Sorensen's point, he's right, absolutely, about dividing those lots and being able to divide those lots. But through division is how these families are able to get an affordable lot. So I would just counter that it does create affordability for lots. I think it would help us have additional lots. I've looked for land in the county and could not find anything in that range. After I did the math on the clearing, getting the septic put in, how much it would cost, and I wasn't going fancy. I was looking at a modular build. It was unaffordable for me. And I know there are multiple staff members and EMS workers and teachers who experience that same problem, which is why we had Paul come and talk, and Mr. Bateman, about that 2035 as well.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Lee, is any guidance that the board's looking for?
No.
Well, we've got 8 options, guys. You know what staff is recommending. I don't know if I'm ready to make any recommendations either, but at the same time, we've got to get some public hearing on this. So that said, you want to make a motion for it for public hearing for our next meeting?
Want me to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will.
No vote other than just, let's get some public hearing on this.
So by next month, we're talking about January?
Next meeting, yes, thank you.
So I will make a motion that we make a revision to Lancaster County, Virginia Land Development Code, Part 1, Zoning Ordinance, Article 18, Waterfront Overlay, All Districts, W1, and choose option 3 to move forward to public hearing at our January meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Booth. We got a motion on the board to forward a recommendation for option 3 to our next meeting, which is January 2025, for public hearing. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. And then we need another motion, if at all possible, to send necessary changes to Article 1 definitions of the zoning code to include language chosen in the preferred option. If you don't mind, I'll make that motion to go along with the previous motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you guys very much. And as we noted, unless there's a surprise, we're not having a meeting in December. Is that still the situation?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Unless you want to have a meeting.
I think we've had enough.
And then anything else coming down the pipe for January that you know about? I know it's early to tell right now.
No, I don't have any rezones at this moment, so this would be our only agenda item for January.
Thank you.
And your January meeting would be January 16th, 2025.
All right.
When would we expect CIP? When would we expect CIP?
February.
February? Thank you.
It's already that
It's
time.
my favorite.
All right. Again, thanks staff. Thanks everyone. Glenn.
Thank you.
You guys. Hope you all have a nice holiday, New Year's.
Yes.
See you next year.
Thanks so much.
This meeting is adjourned.